I'm Johan Rashi Vega here in our sunroom at Holic Media, One Court Plaza in Holic, Mass, and I want to welcome Aliana de la Guardia. We just had a conversation some days ago about the concert in Springfield from Bahue, which it was a great opportunity to get connected and to start exploring all the work that you're doing with your project of Guerilla Opera. So glad to have you here in our studios. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And you are here because we want to know about a project that you are just opening a call for proposals and for collaborative work for one of the projects that you are creating related to Guerilla Opera. Yes. So tell us all about it.
Yes. So I am the executive director of Guerilla Opera, and Guerilla Opera is a contemporary opera company. We really work with artists that are thinking very progressively about opera. We say that we engage in radical new opera, which is why we're called Guerilla Opera, Guerilla Opera, because we're really pushing progressive ideas about opera and what it is, who it is by, who's in it, who tells the stories. And so this year we are so happy to bring back our libretto writing courses. And this started over the pandemic. There was perceived need of all different varied kinds of artists who wanted to tell stories. And especially over the pandemic, not everybody felt the joy or impulse to practice their art in the same way. And we started to see artists that were wanting to learn how to write and how to write for opera, how to make their stories more grand in an operatic way. And so we had summer libretto writing courses that were shorter in form. Those are more introductory for people who have never written for opera before, to learn a little bit about the art form and also to learn about the structure and to start generating ideas. And then we had a 9-month class where artists were selected to be a part of the cohort and would go through a 9-month process to try and complete a draft of an opera or any kind of art form or any kind of text that is meant to be sent to music. So we don't necessarily draw the line at traditional opera, but if somebody was writing, let's say, a musical or a themed album, like where that is operatic in nature, because so you could say like Dark Side of the Moon is very operatic. And so if somebody was writing a kind of themed album in that way and wanted to explore it from the lens of opera, if somebody was writing a larger song cycle or a song cycle with soloists and chorus, that maybe wasn't necessarily a traditional opera but wanted to think about a narrative structure in that same way. So those are really the artists we invite in the longer cohort, people who are really ready to embark on that longer journey of finishing a work. This year, we're very lucky. We had 2 very transformative grants. We received funding from the Mass Humanities, Staffing the Humanities grant, and we also received a Creative Vitality grant from the VAR Foundation. And these both allowed us to bring in the faculty and the staff necessary for us to bring these libretto classes back. And we're really excited to do it again. I really loved interacting with the artists from the previous cohort. Guerilla Opera actually adopted a piece that was written in the previous cohort, and I'm just really excited to see what more amazing ideas come from this gathering of artists.
When you describe writing for an opera, makes me think on the different approaches when someone writes a piece. And you have, of course, writing for a book or for a printed medium. When you think about writing for sound, for a radio, or even an audiobook, you have to approach in a very specific way,
Yeah.
so that way the words that you read can be heard. And sometimes that wording needs to be adjusted so the ear can take it easier.
Yeah.
When you write for a movie, you need to think not only about the story, but also describing the scenes, the places, how the characters in the story are going to move around the space, and how the camera
Yeah.
is also going to move around. So motion, color, light, or absence of it create the feeling of what is intended to be descriptive on that scene. How do you write for an opera?
Yeah. I think that opera is so much its own animal. And so much of the action can be told with the music alone. And I think the best combination for an opera is a really good librettist and a really good composer together. Because no matter what is written, a composer can take it to the next level. The first level, at least for us, is getting the ideas down on paper and figuring out the format of the story, which is not so different necessarily from writing for film or writing for any narrative structure, even if you're going to do something that is non-linear, something that doesn't follow a traditional timeline. And I think lately we've seen a lot of that in a lot of, I think that there are a lot of artists that are challenging the idea of time and how we perceive it. For opera, I think there is an extra element where the music not only describes how the character feels or the environment that the character is in, but the music can be foreboding. It can give you a clue as to what's going to happen. It can remind you of something that happened in the past through themes. And I think when you're writing the libretto, you can think about those things ahead of time. And a conversation that I have with a lot of librettists is to leave space for the music, that it's you're not writing a play. The character doesn't need to say everything that they're going through. The music can do that. And you can write a lot of things in the parentheses, a lot of ideas, the colors that you see, how you think the character feels, everything like that. And actually the actual text can be less, because once you're working with a composer, they're going to want to stretch the words. They're going to put multiple notes on one word or one syllable of a word. And so the text goes by much, much slower. So something I like to say when I am interacting with librettists too is what takes me a minute to recite will take 10 minutes to sing.
Which is a really great way to see how today, 2024, the opera structure is somehow still the same idea of what it was from its beginnings, centuries ago. And of course, with its evolutions on the different ways narratives can be presented, the ways instrumentations can be utilized, and of course, including all the stage practical elements with light and scenery, and even including technology today to create even more immersive experiences through those scenes. You were mentioning that you adopted one piece. What were those elements that attracted you the most to decide to adopt that piece particularly?
Yeah. Well, the piece is called The Windows, and the librettist is Susan Bywaters. Her composing partner is Elizabeth Gartman. Immediately, I liked that it was two women that wrote the piece. The piece was about a woman, and it was a really strong and interesting role for a woman. So the story revolved around a true life missing persons case that was the disappearance of author Barbara Newhall Follett, who was a resident of Brookline in 1939. And I think that she's a great example of the idea of the troubled artist. But I think it really takes a different look at her. She was a childhood prodigy, wrote her first book at 12 years old, became instantly famous, and then really had difficulty writing after that, felt a lot of pressure to produce, to be more artistic, and then growing into an adult, to find herself through other artistic activities, to experience the world and find herself through that. I thought all of that was very interesting. I really loved the text in the libretto. I thought it took a very empathetic view of her. And I liked that Guerilla Opera is based in Boston, so I really liked that it was a local story and a real story, but a very imagined version of it.
So for this cycle that now you are opening the invitation for people to join and create their own librettos, what are the requirements? What is the deadline? Most important, because I think it's a short window.
Yeah. So as I said before, there's 2 different courses. There is a four class course. There you go. That was hard to say. There is a 4-class course, and that is geared towards people who are beginners to intermediate, people who are new to writing to opera or have a new idea. It's going to be a little bit more of an introductory course. And that deadline, I believe, is coming up in 3 days, on June 24th. There is an info session on July 9th, but please double check our website just to make sure of that. And the 9-month writing collective begins in September with a deadline in August. I want to say August 19th. But please also double check the website. But yeah, these deadlines are coming up soon. They're coming up this summer. The process for applying, we wanted it to be as simple as possible. You go online. It's basically a Google form. You give us your information so that we can contact you. You answer a few questions. And those questions are important for us because we want to select people that we feel will benefit from knowing each other and from being in an environment together, because there's a lot of peer learning. There's a lot of reading together, and we also want to make sure that we're selecting participants to create a safe space for the artists who are perhaps telling very personal stories or who are telling stories revolving around trauma. We want a very open and welcoming space for people who are telling any kind of story. And our libretto writing instructor, Kendra Leonard, is a wonderful artist, and I was struck immediately by her compassion and her empathy, and really I think is a great addition to the Guerilla Opera family, and will do an excellent job leading both of these courses. She has experience in leading writing workshops, and also is a very gifted and successful lyricist and librettist herself. Yeah.
So how can people submit their application and get more information about these 2 different courses and projects, so they can get involved and learn more about this beautiful opportunity?
Yes, you can find it on our website. That is guerillaopera.org/opportunities. And that's where we have everything about submitting and all of our courses. So /opportunities. You could also find us guerillaopera.org /guerilla-labs.
Of course, once this project gets to its completion, there is expectation of having a piece that can be produced based on this libretto and then the music created for it. What is that you envision for it to happen or to become in the long term?
Well, as a part of these courses, there are 2 additional things that we do. At the end of the course, we create what is called a pitch packet, which is each person that goes through the class will go through a short class with me, where basically I teach them how to put together their materials and how to present their work, and I give them a formula on how to do that to start, and then they can use the formula in their own way. Also with me, artists get to sign up for a one-on-one, and then we get to talk about the next stage of their project, which is generally me helping them, because they're from all over the country, try to be able to map their resources. Who are the people in their area? What allies do they have in the area? Where is their community? Where are the groups that they can collaborate with? Other artists they can collaborate with, producers, directors, designers, other small opera companies that are looking to produce new work, maybe larger opera companies that want to produce new work, and how to make yourself known and how to make your work known. It's our goal to really be gathering a community, so we want to have more events where we bring librettists and composers together to see what collaborations happen from that, as well as to be able to introduce them to different producers and organizations in our community that might also want to adopt their work.
So this looks like a process that is going to be really intense, active, busy, and constantly generating creative pieces that then all together will become this opera, this whole piece that now I'm really interested on seeing, listening, and enjoying when it comes to its full completion, because we are always used to just go to a concert hall or to a space where a representation of a piece is being featured.
Mm-hmm.
But now knowing that you are creating this from the very inception of an idea to its full development to the final experience, which is the performance, it gives it even more meaning, even more reasons for being involved, if not as part of the creation, as part of the audience, because it's going to be a reflection of what is happening currently in our times with hopefully people in our community.
Well, I agree. And, right now our educational courses and our professional development are really focused on the libretto writing. It's our goal at the end of the libretto writing to reassess our educational programs and to see how we can expand and service the community more. I think everybody knows that producing an opera, even a small one, is very expensive. And there are a lot of people that want to tell their stories through opera. And yet we're the smallest percentage of the arts in the United States. And so, not in other countries, but in the United States, we're the smallest section of the arts. And so with so much interest and so limited resources, we need to, I think, come together as a group, as a community, and think about, okay, now we have all of these operas, all of these artists. What is the next stage for them, and how can we be involved in that next stage with the limited resources that we have?
And also to continue cultivating the awareness and appreciation for opera and for what it may be called art music, but I always have problems with that label because it's not all music art in general. But when we talk about music that is more into this concept of a concert hall, the structure that has been around for so long,
Yeah.
but showing how current it is, how still impactful can be when represented through new voices and new creatives involved in it. So I think, Aliana, you're doing a really beautiful work that is inspiring, there is educative, and also an opportunity for continuing the nourishment of new talent to find ways to express outside of the common ways of artistic representation as we know in the industries.
I'm in agreement with that. Yes. And thank you.
Anything else that you would like to add?
The final thing I would like to add is just that we welcome anyone who wants to experiment with writing for opera. You don't have to be an opera librettist. You can be any sort of writer that is interested in expanding your writing to think in an operatic way. So you could be a hip hop writer, you could be an author, you could be a poet. You can come and write in English, you can come and write in Spanish, but know that the classes are going to be conducted in English. But if you do want to come and write in Spanish, I'm going to be around and present, and I would love to hear all different languages. Opera is a multilingual art form, and I would love to hear all the different languages that are represented here in this country coming through in the operas that are generated from these classes.
Well, this is our conversation with Aliana de la Guardia from Guerilla Opera. Thank you so much for this work, and looking forward to hear how this project continues developing, and hopefully it will be amazing to have maybe a premiere here at Holyoke Media of this work.
Ooh, maybe that's certainly something we could talk about for the future. I think it would be very exciting. I'm so happy to be here and in this community, and thank you so much for having me.